Douglas County, Kansas is well known for its monopoly of slumlords and the surrounding predatory property management companies in the nearby communities and counties. It's also well known as its extremely high number of homeless people. I want to focus on the association of the quote-unquote occult and other historical significance of this particular rabbit hole we're about to jump down. Here are some key notes that I want to bring to your attention. In the previous years, there has been a cluster of people who have, quote-unquote, OD'd on fentanyl. Now, my own findings, I came in an alarming kind of importance in regards to the key factors that's correlating in the practice of occultism, and specifically in the dark practice of unethical principalities and those that are under the umbrella term of demonic death magic, those that typically encompass sacrificial of animals and other unethical non-consent usages and ideology, which would be under the quote-unquote umbrella term of magic. Also, as I did a simple sketch of a map of the kind of the walking distance around all of the deaths that I am referring to, and with some intuitive, guided perception, I found it relatively an example of simplistic in its walking distance from either or, and it was also where you intuitively could find or pinpoint areas of interest where one may want to further an investigation, as well as if there was previous indication of a possible homicide or anything otherwise than the resulting final conclusion that it was just an OD, which by its nature and its pattern, it seemed to be very systematic in a very humanistic way, which typically, if that is the case, it usually has some sort of affiliation. It has something to do with a human. A human's doing something. What is very natural in nature does not show the patterns in a way where one could find some sort of probability and predictability, and it wouldn't be in such a very small range within a simple sketch of a map, which clearly shows a walking distance to this fentanyl clinic and a bar, and I mean, it's very scary. So moving on from that, I do want to point out the urban legends of the affiliation between sororities and frats, and their alleged involvement in cult covens and other principalities, or terminologies and labels that fall in that whole box. Okay, so I find it fascinating that in the perception of just the general public, that one has a cognitive dissonance to certain areas of indoctrined areas of almost in a psychological way where you've been groomed mentally to not associate either or. So for example, it's very similar to how we have a very comfortableness, and it just is as it is the gynecology. So, when you break it down in an aspect of something where you're not birthed into this ideology and conditioned to believe in whatever it is you need to believe, it would be quite like, oh my gosh, because essentially what society and psychological aspects of the preconditioning that's rooted heavily in development and traditions and sociology, you were essentially just having some random person, I don't know about most people, but I typically, growing up in the 90s, it was very general to have a male gynecologist versus a woman, which didn't really come a lot more common until, I had children. But yeah, that's just how it is. And so you just eat it up. But when you look at it from a pause and like, not anything to where you have to look at it in a way where it has to be automatically a negative thing, but just as a present pause and just taking in your surroundings and reevaluating what it is that you see, and also to see if that is what is aligned to what you and who you are at that present moment, or just to kind of check it out. You don't really have to, I guess, expand on the processes. That was just an example of how there really isn't a structuredness to your own thought process as originally probably preconditioned into your mind, if you're from the rootings of heavily anything like the 90s and up in the generations, the public school system. Okay, so moving on. So side note, could those previously determined deaths by drug overdoses in fact may be far more sinister? So I naturally find anomalies and patterns. As someone who's not really a big fan of mathematics, I'm able to look at a bunch of numbers, and once I understand what it is that I'm looking for, I'm able to eventually convert it into my idea rapid synthesis and able to run it in a more efficient manner, and I'm able to see patterns, and just naturally I like to Scooby-Doo things. And I'm seeing patterns which also correlate to similar type OD deaths around the same time frame in another community, in another county, that really there wasn't an organic process, which typically is a result of some what one may start to believe is anomaly, and you're like, when you investigate it a little bit more, you realize, oh, it's rooted into these very ingrained into certain types of situations or environment, and this just popped up. It really didn't have anything rooted into which one would, as a human, quote unquote, just using the humanoid word, which is not really the case, that all of a sudden it's just, oh, there it is. That is bullshit. And I mean, I'm from the 90s, so it was more of well, that's just how it is, and shut your fucking mouth, this is how it is. Thankfully, I did not take that stupid ass ideology and spread that around to my own children and those around me. I actually had to go to college and actually learn how to essentially have the child's development of the mind, and really jump down that rabbit hole. Because I don't know about any of you, I grew up in the 90s where as soon as you're born, you should know everything that there is to know, and then if you don't know, then why don't you know? But no one's teaching you. It's completely idiotic. So I actually had to learn, and surprisingly, when I went to college and really delved into childhood development and the psychology and really got into that, I realized that there was a correlation between key factors of the development of the child, which correlates with certain key milestone moments that the public school system and other community, society, traditional aspects of what we would put under the term of, just milestones of life, I found that fascinating because my college work was relatively kind of new, but not like super new. I mean, like, obviously children's development have been around for a while. I just found it fascinating that this information in its entirety seemed to be only accessible to those in certain sectors. And let's move back to what I was saying about the drug overdose, maybe first more sinister. Is this societal normalization, acceptance of drug overdose, simplistic in the result that it's complete? The perception of the deceased individual and that of others who in their generalized factors of age, gender, and various aspects, and then interviews of others, and other information gathering that will be conducted and concluded within the level of the preconceived conclusion of its start, which means as unorthodox to its own existence, the repeated acceptance to indoctrined results of information by which it governs its own infrastructure, which means how did the whole system of its origin and the principalities that it governs itself to become from, essentially A, B, C, is fascinating because I find that there is something to where one needs a pause if the entire structure of certain processes and systems, their origin is resulting in its conclusion. And I'll get to that later. Okay, so it is widely known as acceptance to the present and past historically evidence of the cult, okay? It's also well known for the utilization of quote-unquote drug overdoses and murders, hits, targets, and other cloaking methods. So for example, one would, let's see, back in the day, like the nurses, they would go and like poison a bunch of people, and it was all rooted into some sort of, psycho, essentially. See, and I really do want to make a point of the need to explain the reasoning behind something that is in generalized umbrella terms, like fucking murder, okay? So, unless you are in a psychology or one who just has the ability to think that deeply, which I find many do not, I find it very characteristic of when someone chooses that particular manner where it doesn't across the board seem to fit in other areas. That is a key indicator that that person is probably going to kill you. But, I didn't go to a structured, traditional, orthodox system to essentially drain everything out of my bank account, become, a slave into a debt system where essentially, even if I had a certificate that I clearly had to take classes and spend money on that didn't have anything to do with my degree, fuck you, algebra. I mean, and also we're rooted and funded into other systems of enslavement and colonization. I'll get to that in a sec. But it's also, isn't it the dream to go to college because that's what's been indoctrinated to you? And then it also helps that if everyone else around you, whether they believe it or not, they have been, in a sense, almost groomed from birth and those before them in the generational line, that it's almost like a animalistic type of reaction than response. It's like shaking the beehive and the bees come out, they're buzzing. It's fascinating to see the almost like autopilot. It could also be many generations, especially if you are part of like these main colonizations of inbreeding between local communities of, you know, their colonization and the constant humanoid parasitic centipedic circle jerkers of eating your own shit that you're feeding each other. I know, right? We're gonna move on. It's interesting that the utilization and weaponization, affiliation, and the association of drug use, drug overdose, and the range of relevancy, and its systematic condition and delivery of which also feeds into itself, as well as to those who exist within a reciprocal environment that self-sustains, maintains, and manages the lack of a better term, colonization, which is very interesting. And I love the word foreplay, because I find it as almost little breadcrumbs or little breadcrumbs that light the way to certain red flags or areas that should be flagged or be aware of. It's almost arrogant in nature, but it's also, I think, might be rooted in the parasitic of its own natural root process, and I'll get to that in a second when I break down this parasitic in its nature, where you would first look at it and think it's almost humanoid, or it's able to think and expand. I believe there's a convergence, and I don't mean there's like two, I mean like there's a convergence between what you believe is a humanoid type mindset, which really just mirrors everything around. It's very basic. I know that there's something in nature that's kind of similar to that, where it just kind of mirrors, because it has that kind of, maybe that's like a cortex, but the thing that actually runs it and drives its force, and really the only reason that it survives is its parasitic part of it, where that on it's aware in the more natural ways, like an animal or like an insect, where it will know that if there's something in the environment that may cause it harm, or it just is aware of that, but it will not understand why or how. And it will use kind of a mirroring system, where it mirrors until it figures out something. And lack of a better summary, divergent. Okay, so within the colonization is within the colonization, and it just continues. It's a colony within a colony within a colony within a colony within a colony. Almost kind of like if you visualize the rings of a tree, or something very like hive or a wasp. There was this wasp that situation that I was in, like way in the past, where I found it at the time it was totally frightening. I cried, and I developed a natural fear of wasps, where they attacked and engulfed my vehicle. And I did find it fascinating, as I did notice that there were levels and different aspects and different jobs and responsibility. There'd be a wasp that would creep around and try to see if there's an opening in the vehicle, and then I could see the different ones that would spin around in case you like stupidly like leave your car. And it was like all the way out. I mean, they had like 3 different rounds, and then they had ones where they would just like dive down whenever there was like maybe some reflection. That in itself is actually a lot more advanced than I believe this high colonization at its core and its origin is and still is, especially with so many years of like inbreeding. And I'll get to that in a second. And then I will bring up why it collaborated with something very similar in its colonization collaboration, which is why we have the infrastructures and very, very more tightening of the systems and processes and rules and such like that. Okay. So henceforth, in its own community and central of its own cohabitation to surrounding structures. Thus, it would be general practice, as well as being a good neighbor, to extend a hand, an invitation for collaboration within the large area as the intentional development of both systems, similar in the industrial market and supply of insert what it is that you believe the market and supply is. Now, see, the collaboration of one colonization to another, or even at the macro level, which would be like organizations, 2 organizations, or even more higher, 2 countries. Now, if we go all the way to the macro level, we can do cliques and groups and clubs in a school system. We can go to a just individual and how that relates to one or the other. So that being said, the parasitic hive colonization has very similar and the micro level at the umbrella term of the generalized perception and the basic description of what we know at this present time as a narcissist. And so it is very similar in nature to really at its core and all the way to the top. It just fit in as it resonates. So typically on the micro level, which I do want to add under the umbrella term of the parasitic hive colonization or humanoid centipedic circle jerkers, under that umbrella term is narcissism and pedophilia. They are interchangeable because they both are rooted in the same, and their behaviors, mechanism, and self-sustaining all fit into the hive colonization. So that's just an umbrella term. If we don't focus on the narcissism or the pedophilia, and we just focus on its origin of behaviors and natures and apply them according to the micro to the macro and other situations in many subcategories and sectors, and that is the whole purpose that is used for, not in the perception and relation to one being above the other. They are essentially all one. It is just one. They are, we are just discovering that, you know, I mean, gosh, like how many decades ago there wasn't narcissism? And there's a reason for that, too. And so when I say the humanoid hive, blah, 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 colonization, the parasitic, that's what I'm referring to. They're all interchangeable because they're all the same. It doesn't matter about the gender either. They're literally all the fucking same. And I'll get with this in a second. I do want to point out the why it's a parasitic. The colonization is obviously rooted in its origins of form and function. It's rooted in historical events where essentially someone or many came to a large environment and just fucking took it and then just spread their shit everywhere, and essentially really harmed everybody that was originally on there. So I want to keep that in mind. And if you do not understand what I mean, where it's rooted in historical events that are so significant in the entire creation of what you believe is humanity on this earth, then you probably should have signed that waiver form before you jump down this rabbit hole. So colonization, based on its form, its function, and how it is, the patterns and how it enables, and, you know, whatever, those fancy fucking science terms. Parasitic because it's, unless I found something else in nature very similar, but I have not, and I feel like this is the word that I'm going to use, because essentially it's not going to exist anyway in time. It's parasitic because, unlike anything else, it needs a host to survive. Let me say that again. It's parasitic because it requires a host to survive. That means it needs a host or something else to be alive. Let that pause. Let that sink in. If that's not sinking in, you're going to be a lost cause, and we're going to do some Walking Dead comparisons. I would tell you, if you were to seem to be an op, I'd be like, hey, just get the flowers, and I would carol away. Moving on. So it's parasitic. Not only does it need a host to stay alive, be alive, to exist, in a sense, it harms the host it needs to survive. Okay, let's go over that again. It's parasitic because it needs a host to be alive and remain alive, and it harms the host that it needs to remain alive. Okay. Well, if that wasn't like, what the fuck, then you also have been affected by a zombie bite, and there's other star seeds or gold lights, or, you know, those, yeah, that's not me. And if I was honest and truthful, which I am, you're just here to probably pick and choose some wordage and smear it around and smear it to the rest of the human centipedic circle jerkers who feed each other and all agree with the same ideology. But hey, yeah, totally. You're so much smarter, is what you believe. All right, so the finality in the drug overdoses, its acceptance rooted in the generalization and oversimplification, the usage of drugs, and the heavily controlled information by which the above systematic indoctrined into, as well resulting in a conditioned mass ideology of acceptance. So essentially, we only believe what we were told, and that's why we have a very, unless, you know, we expanded it on our own journey through life, a very basic core memory that we pull from, which we do occasionally in many different ways. It's just kind of like the core function that's kind of basic. For example, the DARE program, and that apparently people are just walking around with pockets full of drugs trying to sell it to kids, which, you know, in reality, that's not the case, and that there really wasn't anything after that that really expanded in how one would be taught and the information would be provided and given and structured if one were to become like a drug counselor or somebody in clinical psychology. Unless you went and focused on those routes or individual experiences and such. Really, the ideology is very basic. It's cigarettes or tobacco and such, and that's where that core function of pulling it back from where it was to help you grasp a sort of understanding, maybe at a party or soiree, or just, Jeopardy. Or your kid asks you a question, who knows? They're not really rooted in facts or truth, they're just something that one relies on as a fundamental component in their own rooted self, which is, many of them contribute to the cognitive dissonance, where if you're really rooted and really staunch in certain belief systems, that's where there's not really a lot of flexibility, cognitive dissonance may, rear its ugly head. A lot of it's rooted in fear. We're naturally, or at least we're taught that fear is a natural component to any sort of change. You change, the body's always trying to protect itself, which is fascinating to me because I believe that might be rooted in lies. If the body that we know now is self-healing and independent and sovereign. And when you think of the way that the birth process is, it actually creates that fear, whereas we have a better understanding and clarity of truths and information that's been hidden from us many times to enable us to make more choices in which we become more sovereign and free versus just being part of that humanoid centipede circle jerkers where we're just like conditioned and groomed to do what was done before. And if you feel triggered by my word choices and visualizations, which are extremely similar to what is actually going on, then you know at a deep level that that's exactly what's going on, but you lack the ability to step away from the safeness of the hive, where you feel complete in some sort of fucked up way, and that you are loyal to it in a subconscious way, maybe even conscious, and that it upsets you when you yourself know this is truth, and yet either have not come to terms with the choice of you're okay with that, and that's okay, or you're not okay with that, but you cannot grow some fucking balls and shut the fuck up and either do is or do as. But I do want to point out that those who are similar in behavior and idea and perception and triggerness usually have the family component that makes them very susceptible to the colonization of this, where it's easy to latch on. Remember that these have been here for a really long time, so the structures and the whole family system and the traditions and stuff are very rooted into sustaining this colonization. And you probably had a mother who's overly critical. You probably watched a lot of television. So you have a fantasy idea of this dream, and yet you're also indoctrined and in line. So you never kind of ever get to go either or, which leaves you in a state of anxiety and yet a lack of fulfillment, and there is no emotional or deep connection with any of those that you feel are close to you. And you tend to daydream and fantasize a lot, where people think you're disassociating, but it could stem into a disassociative mindset as you slowly just, embody the hive mindset. Essentially, you're just on autopilot at the end, and yet the only thing that seems to trigger you is anything that is, and this is where that parasitic hive mind comes into play. So either you are already infected and have developed the parasitic mindset, which, it's cool, just stay quarantined. You're already there. It is what it is. Or you are struggling between one or the other, and angry because you can't make a choice, because you don't want to make a choice, which is why you are slowly being, devoured by the hive. And that's cool. I mean, everybody makes a choice, even when not making a choice. What is fascinating is that like soul, it would just be like, yeah, just devour me, and I'm, very passive, automatically becomes very aggressive, and their voice, their range and the volume raises when anyone or anything, even on television, anything that is not similar within a behavior or ideal, anything that triggers the other person in the hive that is essentially divergent. So if someone decided, you know what, I don't want to work here anymore, and they want to go someplace else, or they want to do anything, maybe they just want to eat ham instead of turkey on Thursday, that triggers some sort of aggressive, almost animalistic in nature to protect not yourself, but to protect the entire ideal of essentially what it is created you to be. And so I don't want you to, or anyone to think that this is high in mentality or anything such as it is. It's parasitic. Moving on. As the present generalized acceptance of drug use and overdoses have been expanded by its evolution in the disease versus like the children and the dare memory umbrella ideology, it is interesting that the sustain, maintain, remain function of a subcategorization for the colonization that is parasitic. It's parasitic as its nature is to harm the host. Its function is not to the host. Its function is not towards the host that it requires to remain alive. Just moronic and idiotic at all. And even knowing this, it does not deviate from its original. It will, just like that example I had where the guy or the whatever will all of a sudden become aggressive, almost like a different personality. It will do that. It does not want to change in its natural form. It will stay, and it will continue to sustain, remain the core functions. That's why it never expands, and later on I will delve into those who came on Earth to colonize it with a little bit more of a higher mental processing system. If the colonization is not destructive to the host, its systematic delivery of the same process as its intentional origin to the present, understanding of the generalized acceptance, the process to societal norms of its delivering in information from other sources or systems, the colonization and collaboration, its foundational patterns to create other forms of barriers, circles within a circle, is not rooted in the protective effect that's beneficial to the host, whereas no, this protective barrier will coat us like an umbrella because it wants to protect the host. Absolutely not. It does not protect the host, or nothing is beneficial to the host or its inhabitants, or thus in the source of the host that it requires to remain alive, remain functioning. The perfective barriers is actually a protective force to itself. Its inner core, shrouded by, for example, the micro-level elite, with their level of currency versus its workforce and its consumer. It's also acceptance of their track record of consistently negative impact to humanity as a whole. For example, the track record of just from the beginning of existence of the colonization to now, the pollution, the chemicals, the testing, the poisoning. We can take it micro, macro, you can take it individual, you can take it all the way up to the space. We can even take it to different areas of mental, like stress. We can take it to the consumers. In every area, it's spread, and it's indoctrined, yet it's also creative, what you believe is existence of reality. Now, if you had paid attention, this is what we call the slow edging and grooming of humanity. And why would one, in this parasitic colonization, what is the purpose if it's not beneficial to the host, as it harms the host, and its core function in its own existence is to sustain, maintain, and remain? Why would it have hyper-focus in the intention and development and essentially the slow edging and grooming of humanity? Because the desired outcome of the delivery system core is the result in the environment of which it will sustain, maintain, remain, and control. The foundation is based upon essentially an upside-down Ponzi scheme of life, but it's been groomed in the general mass as existence. If this triggers you, it's really way too late for you. And I find it fascinating, but not really anything surprising that one is still listening, as I do have that a magnetism and an energy pull that seems to bring in that of those in the parasitic hive colonization, and there's going to be a main reason for that later. You've already been bitten by essentially like a zombie bite, or you're infected, and if we were in like a dead space, or if we were going to go to like some place where no zombies would live and everybody would live like in blissful peace, that would be a characteristic of anything that has a hive infection, and the mind is parasitic, and this is coming from a long research, analysis, essentially even being part of that hive colonization in many different scenarios to really have a factual and inner knowing rooted in complete transparency and truth of the information that I'm providing. And again, if this triggers you, it's too late for you, and stay in the hive and shut the fuck up. Whatever the reason for your choice is irrelevant. And you know, it's 2025, and we really need to, and I mean we as in those who are being so triggered by what I say and listening intently for any sort of little gold nuggets or breadcrumbs to where I will show you how to, you know, find my open doors and such as you have done to yourself. It's clearly parasitic when one constantly still mirrors and projects what is their own. It's almost like a very simple throwing a ball at a wall and catching it. It really doesn't require that much of a mental state to be aware of this. It is why it needs to be deeply rooted in the creation of existence, which is why their origin is not from this existence. They're from another existence, and they're not from the original creator. They are not an original creation. The original creator created Earth in its perfection, and it also created all the other inhabitants, such as himself, sovereign. Yeah, that's right. God. Because with great power, why the fuck would he just be sitting on a cloud, like, really, like, enjoying suffering of others? Why would he create that? To really put you all in boxes? I mean, do you not see the macro level of nature itself and its complexities? And then now, if you look at the really broken down, sloppy design of a parasitic hive colonization with its constant issues with account, just basic stuff. But yet, you know, you better show up to work and never have any sort of mistakes at all. You better be perfect compared to the elite who sits there and essentially just, that's like one person getting paid a lot, and they get to have they get to choose when they ride to work. They get to make all these choices. They get paid more. They get to essentially do whatever the fuck they want. And that's just one person. So in the ideology of understanding what the fuck you're part of gives you more of a, like, wake the fuck up, because someone's getting paid a lot more money and they're not essentially doing anything when the entire system relies on the working force and the consumers, and it's all like, it's a centipedic circle jerk. But see, while everybody else is a centipedic circle jerk, those in the lead, they're all up there just watching you and laughing. They're the ones who are behind, because essentially they're just a bunch of fucking pussies. And anyway, moving on. We really need to kind of stem away from the constant feeding of these people who are, not people, those in this high colonization. They have a lot of very simple ways to kind of redirect. It's very simple. They tend to choose actions such as when one is in a confrontation. And remember, if you need further research or if you want to delve into your own little rabbit holes, the narcissist and the pedophile, both of those, their behaviors and the rootness of the mesh parenting, the criticalness, the distortion of both genders, and how they apply to social settings and growth of different age brackets. That's very fundamental, and literally you can take that and put it in a fucking industry. For example, it feeds the elite. So the elite just do absolutely nothing. And they don't really need the elite at all, because it's just like maybe one or two people, right? Like a CEO or somebody that's making a ton of money, but logically, you know, that it's excessive, and almost, if you think about it, extremely excessive, but no one's brain ever delves in deep. Like, why is it so excessive, but we're not getting paid enough, but you're being told, oh, well, it's XYZ, but really it's probably because a lot of the currency and money stem from the biggest industry that's been designed from the very beginning of its entire core function when it first came here on to another planet and another existence, and it's essentially squatting shit everywhere. It's humans. Yes. The largest, the biggest, from the very beginning of human trafficking, it's base, it's home base, it's, you know, where they all come and have a meeting and stuff. It's right here in Kansas. You follow the Yellow Brick Road. Now I know some people are going to be like, Epstein's Island. That's like a vacation place, and it had a lot of factors in, one, it was a vacation place and had water. Two, it was easier to hide shit. Three, finances. Now, if you look at it in a business model, really the organization, logistics, just a simple business like a lemonade stand, you'll realize that smack dab right in the Midwest of Kansas would be the best place for the longest standing, longest running, well-oiled. I mean, this is like their main core. See, that's why all the other systems that they've self-sustained, like, I don't know, FDA, the clothing industry, I mean, everything that's been designed and created on this fucking planet is weaponized. And that's all like side hustles, side projects. They all kind of, or you can look at it like in a funny way, like they're money laundering. It all just feeds into these other little businesses. It's almost like your neighbor is selling Mary Kay and this one's selling like cookies, and then everybody kind of feeds each other in the same neighborhood. It's like that, but their main top focus is human trafficking. And that's why, let's go right back where I tie this in with the social grooming and ideology of drug use, and that common core that you bring that stables you to your understanding of basicness of what that is, already has the ideology and the viewpoint. It's like, you know, Sally smokes cigarettes, you know, and then, you know, Sally's like has like a needle in her arm, kind of that very basic rudimentary, and it's also heavily rooted not into what we know now as what drug use is, and it's a disease and addiction and stuff, which, oh, fun fact, which in fact, a fact may not be a fact at all. In fact, a fact may be a fucking lie. But this one I'll tell you is an actual fact. Most of the drugs that were shoved into the environment and to society are exactly the same method and route and delivery system, your prescriptions and vitamins and entertainment, commercials, books, everything. It's the same system. It just tweaks it just a little bit, but it's so simple in its nature and its core that it also kind of distorts the mindset that it must be more complex, but it actually is extremely so simple. And a lot of times it just tweaks it, and if there's any problems and stuff, it just dogpiles onto, you know, the system. So your already staying away and either aware of it or a subconscious aware of it, that, oh, this is in a negative connotation, or this a negative view, you don't want to be a part of it, that's taboo, or you don't want to be associated with that. It's very, conditioned, very similar to why people are still discriminatory and racist over the most simplistic things. They'll just pick and choose, and they'll just use it because it's constant division. So we're watching football. Go Chiefs. You can go and watch your child's soccer game, and we can watch like the World Cup, and then it's okay. And this is where it's essentially those who are in the elite, and that is a self-given name to themselves, not given by anybody else but themselves, hence Centipedic circle jerkers. Wars. So the common ideology that most of these are heavily rooted into the actual figureheads or puppets of the political party. And with that being said, most of them aren't even aware that that is what it is. They are just like you and me, part of the system. And a lot are so heavily already into the system. It's literally very hard, I guess, in a sense, but yet they are at a elite more level where it would be very easy, especially around this time frame. Before, if you were to do that, you would be smear campaigned and weaponized, because they also don't want people to leave the colonization or have this idea that there's something better than that, so they give you this option of either red or blue, or this team or that, the political parties. And then sometimes they'll bombard everything with some extra ones, but really don't feed that too much. And it's already kind of, you really have to put in a lot of energy for something that's either this choice or this choice to actually have any sort of fruition, because it's designed that way. But the ideology and the philosophy, if you keep working very, very hard, your dreams might come true. But yet, I bet if there was a study that wasn't done by this colonization, it would clearly show that was a bunch of bullshit. It wants you to work hard. And this is where that cognitive dissonance is where it's been quoted that the person that created the public school system didn't want people that were thinkers. You just wanted workers, and that's okay too. I mean, everybody gets to make their own choices, but are you really making your own choices when they're all rooted into lies? I mean, then no, you're not. You're not truly free. You are you're mocking of a truth. It's really fucking offensive, and it keeps us in a division of, I don't like you because you're a different color, and this is gonna fuck you all up. The truth of the matter is that no one's a human on this fucking planet. A humanoid, a human, is a stick figure, and it's just used as a classification across the existence of different principalities and planets and like galactic and stuff. You're all multi-dimensional beings, which is why if you fill your fucking head full of nonsense like they do from school and up, where it doesn't make sense logically, why would I need to memorize certain formulas or anything that really isn't rooted in health and safety, or I needed to know, like, boom, like in a second. But I need to fill that in and be scored on that. It's because if your head is full of bullshit, then it can't create. It can't create its own portal, where essentially you're able to become multidimensional. It doesn't want you to do that. It also is so rooted in its rudimentary parasitic mind that it also cannot understand what that is. And so everything that's designed and weaponized and created is a misconstrued conception and understanding from a perception and projection of a parasitic hive colonization. So that's why everything's just essentially sometimes shitty, and it just keeps regurgitating, like, what the fuck? And it's been so interbred into the system and conditioned where, not everybody, it's okay, It's just part of nature. And this is for those who believe that they're free, and really everything that you've ever fucking known about your entire existence has been a lie. And so you're not free at all. And you're fighting with each other, and you're all the same. Like, well, not the same, but... Oh, here's another thing. Even the words, the letters, everything that we need and taught to communicate to one another so we can better understand each other is a fucking lie. Everything's been weaponized. While we're so busy trying to figure out different word arrangements so we don't do this, and this, we can't really speak with each other because everything's been used to divide. And this is also a characteristic of when you are communicating with someone who is part of the hive colonization, or under that umbrella term of, pedophilia or narcissism. Essentially, they're going to fucking kill you type of red flag. They'll pick and choose different words and become hypercritical in the way that you present them. But in all other actions and behaviors, they're really quite disassociative, very... And actually, that's actually offensive to those who do that. Those who disassociate, that actually is fundamental in many different factors. You're actually not, okay, you are in a sense, but it's also a correlation in response to your environment. And that's just another lesson on another time, perhaps. Yeah. Anyhow, like I said, it mirrors. And it mirrors those around them, and it's hyper aware of anything that is not divergent, but for example, anybody from the collective, especially those of the Divine Collective, just being in the same area is originally the parasitic individual come towards, and they are automatically obsessed or attracted. They're not aware. It's very animalistic, but it's offensive to the animals. It's not until much later that it realizes that what it is, that's why it's extremely slow in nature, that if you are part of the collective, or especially part of the divine, or especially part of my gold apples, it's aware that you are an enemy, and that's not in a term. It knows that, if it was fire, that you're water. If it's a bug in your big old shoe, better to stomp on it. It knows, and it will not stop. And it will utilize everything in its own colony and more to eradicate you. It's really quite pathetic. But moving on with that. Dun, dun, dun. Okay. It's also acceptance of their ideology and consistently negative impact to humanity. Okay, poisoning, macro, it's caused such a polluted earth as it continues to cut down trees. It continues child labor, missing children. Also introducing creations that are not natural in nature to cause a adverse effect in the entire ecosystem, such as robotic mosquitoes, introducing things that are not natural to different environments, introducing different types of bacteria, essentially just experimenting with the COVID and just testing, because the whole core focus is itself, so therefore it will highly focus on creating the ideal resulting factor of its own workforce, which is odd because it literally pays no attention to the actual source and the host. So it's like, well, what are you going to do when the host is dead and like the earth? Like, but you have this entire like perfect level to their perfection of projection of a workforce. Like, what are you going to do then? It's going to eat everybody. That's what it's going to do. It's going to literally, like a snake eating its tail, it's going to eat its tail. It will literally, like, it will not protect its own either when it comes down to it. In its individual form, yeah. If it believes it can get away with it and essentially not take any accountability, it will do so. And that's also another characteristic of the hive colonization. It literally has been designed where it cannot take accountability from anything. You see this clearly in politics, and even down to the community council. Well, we can't pass that bill because of the budget, but they never really go into it, and the budget and the audits, they're all like self-feeding into each other. They're all part of the same structure, and yet, they have all this money to allot to other areas, but yet homeless people just seems to be a problem. It's like, oh my gosh, we can't come up with a solution for this. It's because it's so much easier and less energy to take those who don't have documentation, or they're just easier to hide and go missing, and just feed into the main system. Human trafficking, slaughterhouse, wars. Wars is just, you think it's because of XYZ. That's on a, let's say, political level, world level. On the up level, which I'm talking about, which is like a couple steps away from like one would hope to ever achieve in the galactic area, those who believe that they're running the realm of Earth, that they've already been in cahoots with aliens, made some deals. They believe they're in collaborations with entities and contracts with essentially what they were told. Is essentially not fucking true, but and that's, I don't want to give any spoilers. And so wars are just what really fucking disgusting individuals enjoy watching. They enjoy watching the suffering of those who have been created, well, the original ones, sovereign. They really enjoy those. And they enjoy that in different aspects, like football, soccer, wars, the sex trafficking of others, XYZ. Remember that this is not any sort of creation from the original source. Everything you actually understand and you believe is truth is not true at all. Seriously, why would one just automatically be like, yeah, you know what? That God in that Bible, he sounds like someone I totally want to, jump on board with. Are you fucking for real? And I'm the delusional one? Clear one, it's all, sloppily scrapbooked together, and certain things are all, it makes no sense in rhyme, and it's, just by nature, it's very choppy. it's like someone ripped out pages and tried to make a story. That's kind of sort of what it was. And, I mean, for lack of a better comparison, and the one that you've been following so heavily, so blindly, so conditioned, because that's what it is, you know, heavily rooted in fear, but also that is the projection and creation of a misconstrued, and that is what happens when the parasitic of the originals like personified what they would be if they were an idea of what they could comprehend at their parasitic level of what power is, of what God is. For example, my favorite quote is by Stan Lee, creator of Spider-Man. With great power comes great responsibility. I love that quote. I do want to make a note that this is a quote that came from the imagination and creation of someone who has been imprisoned on this fucking planet. So with that being said, with great power, it's a whole different mindset. With great power doesn't come great responsibility. That's just, it's just not like, oh, being alive is breathing air. No shit, fucking Sherlock, duh. It's essentially that, almost like a very broken down system of basic understanding, which is why everything is so constrained and tight and fit in these boxes, because it's a very weirdly abstract visual representation, not because that's what the ideal was, but as someone who has a higher mentality and understanding of perception of different origins, and just basically, I'm not a fucking parasite. My ass isn't stuck in my mouth and vice versa. I'm not eating my own shit. It's a very abstract interpretation of the ideology of it, of what it is, the hive, tight, strained, critical, always just never good enough and just distorted, but that's also just kind of almost like a cloaking, because it will fucking kill you and it will enjoy it, and it mirrors, and almost like, oh, it mirrors like an eagle. It kind of shimmers, like, oh, it's so pretty, or oh, it's whatever it is. It's don't be fooled. It also, in a very low mindset, I really don't want to say mindset, in low understanding, it enjoys and it derives pleasure of the suffering of others. Let me slowly repeat that again. At a lower understanding, parasitic high colonization derives pleasure and enjoys the suffering of others. And then all the way up to the top, there is kind of a collaboration, I'm talking those, from their perception of being at the top of the world, they really stay hidden. I guess kind of the all-seeing eye or the all-knowing, whatever. I'm talking behind that. I'm talking about the ones that aren't books, that no one knows that they even exist. You kind of had to be there to know. And I'm that person. I'm that one person that they've been hiding ever since, because they knew one day I would return. And here I am. Here's... no red carpet, no hello, no how are you, what have you been up to? Yeah, because they've been literally seeking to destroy from from the very beginning. They came here and squatted and did a bunch of fucked up shit. Moving on. They actually enjoy the petty little games to them of war. That's on them. They just have their hands in the mixing of everything and weaponized the entirety of all. That with the whole time frame linear is essentially what kind of trapped them in here too. Fucking idiots. And so that's why there was certain procedures, and why one who had been birthed onto this prison planet would be unable to escape on its own. It's rooted into your entire creation. When the original creator, the Most High, created in his own image, he created them sovereign as gods. And so in ourselves is like a spark, a heart. Even if for any reason you completely forgot who the fuck you are in any realm or portal or existence, it will still lead you back to your sovereignty. And this was the gift of the truth and the love. So we would never be enslaved. We would never be bound. We would always be sovereign. And fun fact, well, shit. So the Cain squatted on planet Earth and slaying the mother's children in front of her, and did a bunch of other fucked up shit, and a lot of other things we don't really need to get to. That'll get to when that time comes. And essentially, those who were supposed to be birthed, with those their mothers and fathers, were brothers, enslaved and fed lies from the very beginning. So therefore, they did not have the spark. They were not birthed on the divine creation and perfection of Earth, and without their mother and father, and they've been enslaved ever since. So everybody, as a collective, for many different time frames, portals, essentially, we all came to free you, all, within reason. Because that'd be kind of defeat the purpose if to free everybody, and then a couple of you zombies, or those infected, would escape. We can't have this spreading across the galaxy. I mean, come on. Have you not seen Walking Dead? I mean, just look at the flowers. And as everything in existence, of the perception of existence, is a lie, then the truth would be essentially kind of like the Care Bear stare that opens the gateway, is the sort of truth, essentially. And see, that here's where truth and a lie has gotten just fucking all mixed up in this prison planet. It's simply, if it is a lie, then it is not true. And if it's not true, then it's a lie. And if it's a lie, it does not exist in existence. It's not real. It's not reality. Now, if it's true, it is not a lie. If it is true, then it exists. It's existence. It's real. In reality. Now, I don't know if anyone here actually could speak truth in anything, because for that to happen, you'd actually have to know the truth to speak it. And to know the truth, the original truth, would be origin by nature, or really fucking long time here, body, existence from existence. And you'd have to have all these key components, and you also would have to have like free will of wanting to do this at different checkpoints, and essentially you'd have to be fucking me. You'd have to be the one exactly as it always is, and who's always done this, and who's kind of a badass. And this would be just a moment in the timeline of the reality, as I've already won, you've already won, we've already done this, and it's flawless. It's a flawless victory. Yes. It was that flawless. It was precise, precision. I mean, that's what happens when you rep for the Most High. I mean, me and my God Squad and the Legions, and we're kind of a big fan. Enough about who I rep for the Most High. Let's move on to some more teachable moments in which each truth that is told or embodied since my existence of this particular reality and the time frame is kind of like just a banshee that transcends all over and does what it needs to do. Okay. Dun, 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 dun. So back to the upside down structure of a Ponzi scheme. So back to the guy who gets so triggered if, let's say his name is Dill. So Dill is like, he wants to be part of the high. That's cool. Nobody gives a shit about your reasonings. Yet he's probably still talking about it because he really never essentially got any sort of validation or XYZ. This is where if you feel that you also need that nurturing, you are so part of the hive, and yeah, you'll just end up lurking from the shadows, completely obsessed and hateful at the same sense, and essentially mindless. And if you're one who has been trained, especially if you are traditionally a feminine, trained to give that support of, that listening of the ear, when really you just don't want to do it because you don't fucking want to, whatever your fucking reason is, or X, Y, Z, really doesn't matter. You're feeding into the system and you're maintaining it. Now, let me tell you, from someone that I guess I could validate with my entirety of existence of validations and where I sit on and how fucking awesome I am and why essentially I'm literally who they call to go anywhere, to go places, to take care of and provide solutions to situations that even the most demonic and evil, scary fucking things in existence don't even want to go. That's me. I'm that person. I love it. That's you gotta do what you gotta do. I do things top level, top tier, above and beyond. I set the standard. I guess it's just rooted from my existence of just being an OG, man. Again, repping for the Most High. And of course, none of this is just me. It's always a very team effort. The entire God Squad, Legions, and Ancestors. And see, we don't have to fall under this whole validation of having anyone understand essentially what cannot be understand, which is oneself. So that was my arrogant representation of the theatrical displayment of the feeding of ego and the ego being fed and the taken away from validation from those who will not. It is fucking bonkers here. We exist where words aren't like this, which clearly is a barrier of communication. So, moving on. You're feeding into the system. What is done in the micro level, which they tell you now, if you're aware, don't feed into the energetic vampire. Now, 10 years ago, when I was going through this research, and I was essentially a trailblazer, the entire of what we know now as narcissists, and how what I know is a parasitic colonization and the complete origins and everything, that is literally, it's common knowledge. Again, this is a different time frame. I'm someone that kind of, I fuck around with the archives across the galaxy, so my information and findings is very significant. We're also very open and transparent about sharing free information. We don't gatekeep. Like I said, with great power comes absolutely no great responsibility. True power is, why would you be sitting on a cloud? Why would one be sitting on a cloud? Or am I confusing that with the mythical versions of God? And why, if you are so powerful, why are you turning into an animal to essentially just rape a human? There you go. Now, a lot of the really fucked up things that they allowed to be part of the knowledge of different principalities throughout history is actually kind of, I would compare it to when Disney used to have artists, and they would put like little, adult kind of things in their cartoons, like a ha-ha, like no one's gonna see that, or like the Brad Pitt putting stuff in that movie, Splicing in Fight Club, that's their like ha-ha-ha, where, and also it creates that mentality of the ideal results of a workforce that sustains and maintains, which essentially would be, if it could, snake eating its own tail and not choking on it. If it could pleasure itself, but also choke itself, essentially it's a centipede circle jerk. It's disgusting. And it really doesn't have a very expansive mindset. And it, by nature, does not take accountability. So, like a duck, naturally, how its feathers and the oils on it repel water, I want you to have that comparison when it comes down to the function and the characteristics of a parasitic hive colonization. I don't want one to have the idea or the misinterpretation that it has a mental capabilities that is predatory nature, redirection. And this is all where, they teach humans have a left and a right brain, and one brain functions this way. It's like very, like imagine the skulls that you get at Dollar Tree, like the little plastic ones. It's like their left one, left arm. It's a mockery of. It's a mockery and a representation of essentially what a parasite would be if it was a humanoid and separate from the hive, as it enslaves those by birthright gods and enslaved them to literally just be returned right back again. There's no heaven and hell on this prison planet. You are in hell. And with that being said, a lot of what one has grown into this understanding of what is demonic or evil or under that still applies. There are still different factions and sectors on this realm, but there's also a lot of what has been blamed on either, like, you know, the target of this puppet of what you believe is God, this puppet creation, which is just the parasitic hive's interpretation of what it would like to be, and the version of like the devil or demonic. It really doesn't matter at any religion. I mean, just evil and like super like God. Both of them, I mean, if you really look at it, they both suck. I mean, they both suck. They both are fear. They're both highly like critical and hyper focused on like perfection, with a really lack of directions. They're also weirdly like obsessed with like weird shit. It's like, you better do all of these things or, you know, I'm going to kill everybody. Or if you don't, it's very authoritarian, it's very dictatorship, it's very, like, why would you, I mean, that really shows a lot of roots. I would say, comparison, it's very similar to someone that needs to kind of compensate, so they'll go and do something excessive, or those who are hiding certain distortions of, for example, those who are distorted in their sexuality and have this black and white viewpoint of I can only choose one or the other, and the choice itself is in the inability to make a choice based on the criticalness of its upbringing, so it stays in this constant, like, static, and essentially just is full of rage and a almost like childlike, toddler, age regression, lack of emotional maturity, you know, essentially it's just a fucktard, okay? And it just has a emotional outburst, and it's like, okay, and then what is with these sacrifices? Are you fucking kidding me? And this is like, hey, that's cool, I'll sign up for this. What the? This is why it was like literally going right over people's head when it's clearly they're still like molesting children in these churches, if not more. I mean, why do you not hear about it across like the media? Because you really have to actually look for the news, which is the opposite of what journalism is supposed to be. It's almost like they indoctrined this structure and then got lazy to sustain it. So they need the workforce to sustain the structure because they're all focused on the human trafficking thing. And so you're literally holding up your own prison. And every time you want to step away and say, fuck this, like, this doesn't make sense. Why should I go to work where everybody else goes to work at 8 a.m. at the same time? Why is it that every school is designed with the most shittiest lighting and then illogically where the child from one point to the other only has a very short period of time to literally, even as an adult at its super fast rate, could not complete like a fourth of that? And why is every one of them, the drop-off and the pickup is dangerous and literally designed to keep you in a constant state of, like, almost like an edging, but a constant state of control, because eventually they'll break you down, or you'll just break, and you will self-medicate to XYZ, to a whole bunch of array of choices that they've already created to continue the enslavement. I mean, it's so much easier to feed the system if one is homeless, one does not have a support system, one is broke, one is in need of money, is single parent, is a child, is being bullied, is a complete collaboration of many communities working together to target one person, to blacklist them for several fucking years, and essentially steal their identity and do the most. But hey, that might just be me. But it makes sense because, like I said, the hive at its natural, this running force is not the one that mirrors. It's because the one that mirrors and the one that it repels any sort of accountability by its nature and by its structure and formation is like, it's covering. It's, like if it was a duck, that's their feathers. Versus those who came later to squat on my fucking planet and create and collaborate to expand on human trafficking and the enslavement and etc., etc. They're the ones who created like the systems in fashion, consumerism, food. They really focused on what feeds that cycle. Entertainment. So if your brain and your body and like porn, like they feed into that to keep you in a state of being fed. You won't know that you're hungry until they choose for you to be hungry, and it's a sense of control. And it's almost ridiculous when one realizes that just the truth itself is what sets you free. For example, the P. Diddy. And I do want to point out that Cassie is also Filipino. Go Filipino, just with one truth. And, you know, the perception of the entire reality of that entire structure in the industry and how it expanded for a really long time, I do want to point that out. That expanded and involved many for a really, really long time. And that's going to be very substantial with what I'm going to say in a little bit. And all she did was start speaking the truth. And yes, such as anything that is going to be divergent from the hive, a lot of people are going to come at you and try to do the smear campaigns or target you, like what they did with Michael Jackson, Britney Spears, Amanda Bynes. Essentially, if you cannot be part of the hive, they will destroy you or fuck you up in such a way and do it in such a way where it has been compounded in a reality that at one point, for Britney, for example, at one point, everybody was a fan and they couldn't get enough of her. And then all of a sudden, with one flip, she was completely alone. And essentially what we know now are signs of needing support and understanding. And still to this day, so many continue to give comments that, you know, this is just true, no one gives a fuck about. because they still want to judge her, which is so fascinating to me. Like how, tell me that you're obsessed without telling me that you're not obsessed, that you are obsessed. Like how that distortion, and that's also characteristic of some sort of affection or a parasite. Maybe it's a hybrid. That's you're not fucking coming to the happy area. Envy and ego, jealousy. I mean, like I said, I've been here for a really long time, and I have, as always, with precision, I'm very, very aware and understanding of the inner workings of what I will dismantle. And I know that triggered so many, especially those who find it very arrogant, and especially those who are masculine, who somehow you just fucking can't stand me. It's called competition. And you can probably think your family framework and your distortion and lack of ability to really know yourself that you project upon with an ego basic lurking self, and I am apparently your sacrificial lamb, your martyr. Honey, this ain't my first fucking rodeo. I'm not a one-trick pony. I've ridden a couple of horses that might be a little biblical, but I'll tell you one thing. I don't give a fuck what anyone and their belief, their perception, their understanding. I'm also not going to feed into anything that is parasitic by nature. And I understand that it takes the understanding of truth to even get and resonate what I'm saying. And that's okay, because I don't need any assistance to what I came here to do. A lot of things, actually. I got a lot of to-do things, and this is actually just a side quest, like freeing the planet. Yeah. I know, right? Like, everybody's just, like, holding on to this planet, like, ah! And really, they're just holding on to nothing they've ever even had control of. And they just squatted here. But, you know, I don't want to do any spoilers. And there are just stipulations of the next to come, and I think deep down we kind of knew this, and I think those who are last minute, last ditching, trying to attach themselves to anything that's divine or destiny swap or, you know, energetically, you know, exchange, whatever delulu shit that you all perceived as reality from before. And you all think I'm Delulu. If this triggers you, it's because you're part of the problem. And you probably, if you're even listening to this, probably been part of the problem for at least for my divine collective. I'm not saying that you're all are the problem. You just made me the target. And as so divinely designed, let me tell you the truth. To exist is to not be a lie, for a lie does not exist in existence. It's not real, not reality, for it is truth that is real, reality that exists in existence. And if you're hyper-focused on me and what I say, it's probably because you have something you don't want to come out. Which, that's crazy. I mean, you can hold in your shit as much as you want. That's a personal you thing. I mean, tell me it again because deep down, you're part of the hive. Yeah. Because you can't explain it. Because it's not envy, ego, or jealousy, or fear. It's because you are already part of the hive. And you've instilled, installed, as you should, be contained and quarantined for the health and safety of everyone else in existence and all the other existence. And I really just do whatever the fuck I want versus what this colonization has in previous embodiments conditioned one to be. So if that's something that you jive with, no leather jacket necessary. And who gives a fuck what Dill over there in the break room has to say? He cries himself to sleep at night and don't feel sorry for him. He's already part of the hive. And once you're part of the hive, you're essentially the umbrella term of pedophilia and narcissism. Oh, and fun fact, your taxes are helping to maintain, sustain, and benefit other pedophilic pieces of shit in prisons with food, a place to sleep, clothing, hygiene products, medication, and other essentials with your fucking tax dollars. And each and every day, non-profit shelters euthanize dogs. And here in Johnson County and other surrounding communities, they focus on euthanizing, essentially they have to be pit bulls and other quote-unquote aggressive breed based on all of the property management and communities here have a lease policy provision where one cannot have a quote-unquote what is considered a aggressive breed. And so many animals are euthanized because your tax dollars do not go to nonprofit animal shelters where these animals have absolutely no control of their shitty ass, people who probably get them and then, abandon them or however they came to exist. But I'll tell you what they don't do. Any of those aggressive breeds that are listed in those apartment communities, it's only just to offset any sort of liability versus the just common sense. They don't go around essaying or raping small children, or they just don't do that in general. So your tax dollars are supporting, sustaining, maintaining to remain a pedophile. Oh, and those homeless people and it's not in the budget. Really, if you look in your state's missing organization, and if you aren't part of the hive colonization, you'll be able to notice the patterns and the fluctuations, the trends, or seasonal changes of essentially those who are just making orders of people. And you can do this with children and adults, and it's very seasonal. It's very comparative to anything in logistics, fashion, or ordering shit from IKEA. And if you really want to delve down to that rabbit hole, they will actually, back to my original thought process of the occult. Yeah, you didn't think I was going to make it all the way back, did you? Yeah, essentially that's what they all thought too, but here I am. So, back to the occultism, which is heavily reliant on numerology and names and birthdays and ages and other factors. It's very significant, and I haven't actually put the energy or the work in because I just kind of already know that I bet you it's very heavy if one would jump down that rabbit hole of the correlations between historically celebrated days of sacrifice, especially if you're part of the collective and just really want to immerse yourself in this because it resonates and you're guided to do so, which obviously you are. But again, as a sovereign, and as you as well, this is, or perhaps the validation or clarification that I never give to anybody else, but I do to the Divine Collective and those of such. Because it is a team effort, and it's a glorious effort, and the after celebratory party is insane. I don't want to give spoilers, but there might be kind of a team dance later. Oh man, did I just sign up the God's Squad for that? Come on guys, come on, come on. Anyhow, I find it fascinating that as we go right back to Lawrence, Kansas, and how close it is to proximity to Johnson County, Kansas, and other surrounding communities, and its affiliation historically with Freemasons and quote-unquote churches, which are really just a term and label used to offset tax purposes. And tell me again why I'm the delusional one. I'm so crazy. Oh, that's right, about the drug things. Oh, I obviously must be on some sort of drugs, or I have a mental, essentially just has already shown the 3 routes it uses in the process of eradication, and it has been shown in the media and perhaps in your own life towards those in your social circles. If it cannot control and it cannot contain, or essentially if it's divergent, it's going to unleash its own hive in a smear campaign, which really, is it really smear campaigning if everybody else is agreeance with it? And see, and that's where that empathy and that, oh, let me be a supporting ear. It's 2025, and they're already part of the collective, honeys and bunnies and pumpkin pies. Don't let their mirroring of yourself be the death of you. Because it won't. That was just something where, just to kind of keep you on your toes, and just to let the hive know that I know. She knows. She knows. Essentially, back to those and its outer covering of protection, like a duck and its feathers. The ability to naturally just sweep away or repel accountability or place blame on anything excuse me, onto anything else is just the protective barrier, not in a driving force. And that's why what you have been conditioned and told to believe is God is, or the devil, or whatever, is the reasoning and who you should blame, or even blame yourself. I mean, obviously you did something wrong. I mean, why else would all these bad things happen? Like, fucked up shit like that is incorrect. And a lot of those in those lower sectors, which have quote-unquote had the labels of demons, and they're actually quite upset of its depiction and representation of what they are not, and quite disgusted with how they've been portrayed. Not all, just some. Remember, we're all individuals as well. So as a sovereign, I can only speak for myself unless I am already in a chosen leadership or a sovereignty role where I can't speak in the as a whole for others, which is a lot. With that being said, a lot what you think is demonic actually had a very collaborative and crucial involvement in the downfall of this parasitic hive colonization. Nobody in existence wants this to exist. It's parasitic, and once it's done wherever it's done, it's just going to keep spreading. I mean, it came from wherever, which does not exist anymore, to come here. And it can hide. I mean, what's the point of taking everything and then just hiding this entire time? And there is no escape plans. There's no spaceships that you can jump on and hide away from. I mean, how did you think this was going to end? Oh, of course not. You didn't think at all. And it's ironic and moronic at the same time. So whatever you've been conditioned to be and play a part, it's essentially up to you if you want to take a leap of... See, and I don't like to say leap of faith, because a lot of ideologies blindly just, again, following something that you don't really know. Because those that were trying to free from the planet, they really don't know at its core, because it was taken from them. The collective know, and they resonate. Every time you do something that is the opposite of what's conditioned for you to be, and you just naturally learn to embody in yourself whatever that is, it kind of glitches the system. And you're going to get a lot of push, and, you know, it is what it is, and it's not, you know, here's a lollipop and the red carpet. Unfortunately, if you really want to be free, then free yourself. That's all it is. If you really want to be free, just free yourself. Literally, you don't have to even leave your fucking room. You don't have to exert energy. You don't have to do anything, at least just starting off, is just freeing yourself from knowing yourself. What is yourself? Who is yourself? And also, based on universal law, that would suck if you broke away from the hive colonization by doing, you know, essentially things that I didn't get to my point and my level, you know, doing whatever the hive colonization does, which essentially is kind of my protection, because they do a lot to create these narratives where I'm essentially them. And you know, it's kind of sad and pathetic, because if I was any of them, I would do it even so much more. I would be just the most disgusting parasitic high colonization. I mean, I would be the embodiment of whatever fucked up shit that they do. Almost like the Jabba the Hutt, you know? And I think even at that embodiment, they knew that I would eradicate them, whatever that core is, Like I would literally eat myself whole. Huh. How disgustingly fucked up. And that's the parasites. And you can do your part each and every day, baby steps or little steps or whatever steps, tip tap, tap dance. But doing your part by starving the colony. How do I starve the colony? Just as it's micro level for an energetic vampire, you give it absolutely no fucking energy, no attention. And here's the key point. Eventually, for those who are just starting off, you'll soon not give a fuck. And for those who just really don't give a fuck, because why would you give a fuck about anything that essentially never existed in existence to exist? That's so paradoxical in nature. Don't feed in to the system. It can't sustain itself at any level, whatever it is that you just feel you want to play a part in. The more you play a part in yourself, the more they're triggered, the more they glitch out, the more they're already hyper-focused. They already know. And you know, as a sovereign being, and essentially, as you are a sovereign being enslaved in this prison planet, the choice is yours, and there is no judgment. If you choose to do whatever the fuck it is that you do that, man. That's still sovereign. It's like Cypher in Matrix. Everybody else wanted to shit on him. You know? You gotta think on that mindset where he came from Matrix and then entered into. I mean, he entered into like people. That wasn't a very like, oh shit, this is awesome. It wasn't like he like matrixed into the reality of like, you know, some sort of existence where it's not like shit. And he just wanted to go back and eat a steak, and I get that, you know. I'm more of the Neo and the Trinity. I'm the whole fucking rescue. That's just kind of who I am. But you know, I like steak too. And it's all good, whatever your choice is. And even if you choose to like completely have the hive, you know, slowly ingest you into its own colonization, that's your choice too, man. Kind of gnarly. And visually, if it was like an HBO movie, that'd be like pretty fucking sick, but still cool. And then I'll see you soon when I eradicate all of you from existence. I would like to end this by saying I hope you enjoyed these teachable talking tangents, but essentially I could care less, and these are just part of the archives, part of the Space Flop December. Oh no, it's January. Is it January? Goose. Just like that. That natural needing to respond to fill that air with something is conditioned. You're sovereign. I am sovereign, and I'm free, and there's no fucking thing that will ever bound me. I'm unbounded, and any contracts in existence are null and void for it is a lie. And if it is a lie, it does not exist. It's not in existence. It's not real. It's not reality. Because it's definitely, sure as hell, not fucking true. And if anyone has any sort of issues or believes this may be a misunderstanding or feels very dumb as fuck, if anybody has any issues with me saying that, I mean, we could take this on the 3D level of the judicial system, because that's one of the very, very, it was even left in the Bible, kind of, sort of, the placeholdment of perception of power and authoritative nature, and then to have that misconstrued and weaponized to further enslave and doctrine and make an example to those based on collaborations behind the shadows, and essentially all the dots connect. Because just like Dorothy Gale, she was just a small town Kansas girl, living in her black and white world, riding her bike with her little dog Toto, and this shit all of a sudden, Twister Tornado took her entire world and dropped her in Oz, right on some fucking person, and then was told, like, hey, it's cool, steal her fucking shoes and wear them. What? Could you imagine how she must have felt? Like, that's all she's ever known is reality and existence, and then she steps in to all that color. And yes, let's not delve too deep into it, because it really wasn't like a wonderland. It's about the same, actually. There's a lot of Easter eggs that one has left for the very existence of one's existence on this life plane for this lifetime, and that correlate very, very closely to different shades and statics of oneself. And just like Dorothy, who stepped into this Oz, this wonderland, this rabbit hole, by herself, and completely manipulated by a narcissistic, bubble writing, which essentially had absolutely no power, but manipulated Dorothy, because the power was always in her, into becoming an assassin and destroying each and every power player of the land of Oz, only to realize that she is bloodline to Ozma and Glenda, the Good Witch, and anyone else in existence of Oz is not the rightful ruler of Oz, which is why Dorothy and the Twister of Truth converged, aligned with such a bloodline to ensure those of blood and birth return to what is rightfully theirs. And so I sit on the earth's throne. I take my crown and I use it to steer like a motherfucking merkaba. Blast off. We're almost there. We're almost there. Can you hear? And if you can't hear, then you're probably that one distorted Tweedledee Tweedledum, the one that rooted. Oh, basement, he read my diary. The one that goes around and poisons. See, the best part of waking up is the vultures in your cup. Or anything that any of you fuckers have tried to put in mind to poison me. A lot. It's true. And just the embodiment of its existence. It doesn't even have to exist here. In all existence. That's why it's flawless. Victory. That's why I am in my little safe little nest covered by my wings. Happy. I'm blissfully happy. If it wasn't for all of you dumbasses, I would have never got to exactly where I was always going to be. But I guess if everyone believes it's a fact, it must be so. Centipede circle jerkers. And plus, you know, this is just a side mission. I got other shit to do. I'm being blissfully happy. Oh, I just got that in the tip of the forefront of one's mind. And she kind of toggled between, is it still there? Does anybody know? It is the month of my birth. And to celebrate, let us unearth those who are the ones that are listening and have been for quite some time, those who are so invested in what I do and who I am. And if I rhyme, I'm not a rapper, but I'll rap it up. To celebrate my birthday, the month of my birth, unearth what each and every one fears the most. To be shown and known and told in clarity, in context and detail, names and numbers, and so much more. And each time across the world that it is being downloaded by the collective and more to the divine, to be unfolded, to be told, to unwind what needs to be unwind, to connect what it needs to connect, until all is known, and for us to find the way to those lost, for those buried, for those unalive, for those that come to some for help. For I don't need to Scooby-Doo it at all. And so it is. And let it manifest with an acceleration to show divinely designed to align with my aesthetic nature and elation of the creation of the Most High for all. And for those who should not exist at all.